Let's get into it. It's a new channel, but the clap will remain the same. Okay? Just flimsy and weak, as so many of you have said. Let's get into it. People are saying that the ticker has started with Matt Walsh getting fired from the Daily Wire or leaving on his own accord. We don't know. But recently, with what's gone on with Candace Owens, Matt Walsh has made a certain video. Now, it's not about Candace Owens, and so many people gave him flack for not speaking on Candace Owens, but it's actually about this. Let me pull this up for you guys really quick. This is very, very interesting that Matt Walsh would decide to do this. Okay, so now what's happened is Governor Abbott has decided to make an executive order against anti-Semitism in colleges and universities. Okay, so the order requires higher education institutions in Texas to review their freedom of speech policies to establish appropriate punishments for anti-Semitic rhetoric on college and university campuses to ensure policies that address the sharp rise in anti-Semitism acts are enforced and include the definition of anti-Semitism in free speech policies. Now, that sounds pretty good right away, but Matt Walsh actually disagrees with this happening. So we're going to be playing some of what Matt Walsh has to say. I got 3 clips of him, and then some clips talking about the rise in anti-Semitism on these college campuses. Then we're also going to touch a little bit on Ben Shapiro and the reason why I think Ben Shapiro would not like this. So I'm going to be playing a clip of Ben Shapiro commenting on Tucker Carlson commenting on Ben Shapiro, and just an overall breakdown of what Matt is saying and how this may not look good for him. Let's play this first clip.
But I'll focus on just 3 of those reasons. First of all, violence, vandalism, threats, and deliberate incitement are already illegal. Now, some have defended this executive order by arguing that its real intent is to crack down on these, sorts of crimes that are committed against Jewish people. But again, these are crimes. They're already illegal. If they're happening anywhere in Texas, whether on a college campus or not, the state already has all of the authority it needs to arrest and prosecute the culprits. You don't need to make an illegal thing even more illegal. You don't need an executive order making it extra illegal. Just enforce the laws that are already on the books. So, if, say, somebody's vandalizing a synagogue or assaulting a Jewish person or explicitly calling for violence against Jews, they can already be arrested. This order will do nothing to stop or punish those crimes because they already have the laws in place to stop or punish those crimes. And if somehow they didn't have the laws in place, if, let's say, Texas had forgotten to make vandalism or assault illegal, well, then the solution would be to pass a law making those violent acts illegal. But even then, this executive order would be the wrong way to do it. 1, because it's an executive order, not a law. And 2, because it seeks to protect one particular group instead of all groups. So vandalism, assault, etc., they are wrong no matter who they target. They are equally wrong no matter who they target. They should be prosecuted with equal vigor regardless of the demographics of the victim. We do not need laws protecting Jewish people. We need laws protecting people, to include Jews, obviously, and everybody else. And if we already have those laws, which we do, then we don't need a second law or order making these crimes extra specially illegal if you commit them against a certain group. But the real point here has nothing to do with physical crimes. The real point is the bit about anti-Semitic rhetoric, which brings us to the second problem related to the issue that I just raised in the first. Let's pretend for a moment that we all agreed that so-called hate speech should be banned from universities. Let's pretend that hateful rhetoric really had no place in Texas or anywhere else, as the governor would say. Now, I don't agree with this idea, as I'll explain in a moment, but let's grant it for the sake of argument. Well then, why wouldn't the executive order establish appropriate punishments, quote unquote, for hateful rhetoric against anyone of any group? And if for whatever reason it was decided that we needed to actually specifically outline every single group that you cannot say hateful things about, then why are certain groups conspicuously left off the list? It is rather hard to imagine Greg Abbott ever issuing an executive order calling for punishments for anti-white rhetoric on college campuses, in spite of the fact that anti-whiteism is not only incredibly pervasive on every major university campus in the country, but it's also part of the curriculum. Students are forced to listen to anti-white screeds in the classroom from their professors. Every hateful thing imaginable has been said on college campuses about white people by staff, by administrators, by professors, let alone also, of course, the students. Yet, to my knowledge, Greg Abbott has never issued an executive order addressing that.
Very true. Very true. Imagine someone saying it's not okay to be Jewish. It's not okay to be black. It's not okay to be Asian. Everybody would be up in arms. But when somebody of color says it's not okay to be white, which has been just, there has been video compilations of just black people, just all sorts of people just saying, nah, white people, I don't like white guys, just all sorts of things. Nobody bats an eyelash when people say that about white people. He's very right in saying that. But here's the thing. He's a part of Daily Wire. So the fact that he's saying this right now, especially after everything that's happened with Candace Owens, is kind of him taking a stand, I feel. For him to do this directly after, I mean, it's still fresh. It hasn't even, was it been a week maybe since Candace has left? He and Candace were friends. As much as people don't like the fact that he didn't make a statement just outright, he's more than likely talked to Candace Owens more than any of us have. So she probably knows how he feels. He knows how he feels. They've probably come to some kind of agreement and you know, he probably wishes her well. She's probably fine with him staying at the Daily Wire, you know. But for him to do this right at this time kind of says, I don't want to say it says F you, but you know that Candace didn't say anything too outlandish. And in the next clips that I'm going to show you, I don't know, he's saying more stuff that are around this lines. Now, what I'm going to show you is that there is a bit of a spike, apparently, in anti-Semitic rhetoric. Here's another clip just to show you what exactly Greg Abbott is reacting to.
Officials are warning people of anti-Semitic vandalism near and on campus. In a message to students Thursday, they say there will be dire consequences for the people that make it. On social media, they said the vandalism does not align with their institutional values. University police said vandalism like this is a cause to call 911, and people can also send messages, photos, or videos through their Live Safe app, or Live Safe app there. According to a new report by the Anti-Defamation League, hate is on the rise in the state. The report is called Hate in the Lone Star State, and it found that between 2021 and 2022, Texas had the highest number of incidents of white supremacist propaganda in the entire country. Some of the major events and incidents it looked at included a hostage situation at a synagogue in North Texas, protests outside of a drag bingo event in Katy, and the gathering of the Proud Boys during the NRA National Convention in Houston. This report cites a propaganda and anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ+, and anti-immigration sentiment as major concerns.
So we are seeing these numbers increase, whether they're harassment or actual violence against all these groups. And we're also seeing an increase in hate online and on social media platforms.
As for solutions, Anti-Defamation League leaders say policymakers in Texas need to work together to come up with a plan to combat this. The group is also recommending hate crime training for law enforcement.
So, this is very interesting, right? So this is what Greg Abbott is reacting to. This is what he has to say. But at the same time, Matt Walsh, he brought up a great point. Why not include everyone? Why not just include black people, white people, Asians? Why not just include everybody? Why are you looking after just one certain people? And again, the reason I'm showing you this is because this is why, right? But you can also find instances of anti-white, anti-black. If you look for it, you can find it everywhere. You'll be able to see it everywhere, especially college, university campuses, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting. Very, very interesting. But the most interesting thing is not that Greg Abbott did this, because Greg Abbott's a politician. And if there's a rise in anti-Semitism and there's a bunch of Jewish organizations and groups that bring attention to it, and they look at him and they say, what are you going to do about it? he's going to react like a politician. I'll do something right now. I'll do that. But Matt Walsh has a lot to say. Here's a little bit more of what Matt Walsh has to say. Let's go.
I reject that completely. I also reject the idea that any form of rhetoric at all should be banned or punished on college campuses. Threats and incitements are already illegal, as we've established. So putting those aside, we are left with opinions, claims, ideas, exhortations, declarations. And as for those, even if they're wrong, even if they're baseless, even if they're offensive, even if they are, yes, hateful, they should not be banned or punished, and they certainly should not be the subject of an executive order from the governor's office. We cannot pretend to care in the slightest bit about free speech if we are banning speech on the basis that it's hateful towards protected groups. This is not just an infringement on free speech, it is the total eradication of free speech. Because after all, the only kind of speech that really needs legal protection in the first place is the speech that is deemed hateful and inappropriate by the powers that be. Speech that is pleasant and uncontroversial and friendly and gentle, that doesn't need to be protected. I mean, you could live in a country with no free speech. You could live in North Korea. You could be locked up in a communist prison camp and you'd still be able to say all those sorts of things. So when a person in power says, you have free speech, unless it's speech that I find to be really inappropriate personally, that's another way of saying that you don't have free speech. And this point, I would think, is obvious.
So the reason I bring this up is I don't think Ben Shapiro or Jeremy, the CEO, I don't think they would like this type of thing. You know, given what Candace Owens made a tweet about not being able to worship two gods, and you can't worship money and worship God. And Ben Shapiro retorted because he was so emotional from everything that's happened. I mean, he was an emotional wreck. It was terrible. I'm going to show you some of that right now. But he responded with, you should quit. You should quit. For some reason, he equated what she was saying to him or the company, Daily Wire, being the devil and being the money that she's talking about that she can't worship. And it's like, you can still make money without worshiping it. But again, Ben Shapiro was very emotional. And if he got emotional over that tweet, calling for her to quit, what is he going to say about Matt Walsh saying there shouldn't be a special protection over Jewish people? And he's kind of having the mindset of all lives matter, which I agree with. Yeah, I agree with all lives matter. I agree with white lives matter. I really do. I have a whole white side of my family. And if any of them passed away or got hurt, it would be a tremendous, tremendous hurt on my heart and, you know, my wife and everyone, you know? So, but in the face of people saying that there should be these special, almost like a double protection over the Jewish community, when you're looking and saying, hey, what about white people and what about everyone? I don't know. I don't know what Ben Shapiro will think about that. Ben Shapiro ended up saying this to Tucker Carlson after Tucker Carlson was just talking about looking after America. Tucker Carlson has a very America first attitude. And because of that attitude, Ben Shapiro decided to say this about Tucker Carlson.
Overdose deaths in the United States. Now, I believe we should fully care about the 100,000 drug overdose deaths that happen in the United States. These are two completely different issues. To go this far afield to link the issues, the only reason you're doing this is because you wish to downplay the atrocity that just happened in Israel. You're not upplaying the atrocity of what's happening on America's streets. Those are two different types of atrocities. People who are addicted to fentanyl, sticking needles in their arms and overdosing is a moral blight. It is a moral atrocity and a moral evil for people to kidnap women, them, and drag them back to the Gaza border. Those are not the same thing. And Tucker knows that. But this is a cheap way of telling you not to look. Don't look. Stop caring. Because after all, what does it matter? What does it matter? Now, again, I don't know who thinks that that's a sophisticated point of view, especially when nobody is calling for America to go to war with Iran. The entire purpose of having an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean is to avoid that. But here is Tucker playing. I don't even know the game he's playing. This is just a dumb game.
So this has all been, thank you, Crystal.
So that was Ben Shapiro commenting on what Tucker said. And again, all Tucker was saying was that there are other issues to deal with. There is a fentanyl crisis. There is an open border. There is people just throughout all of America who really need help. And the fact that the Biden administration keeps on focusing their resources, billions of dollars of resources, on Ukraine to the tune of, what are we at, like $170 billion, $200 billion? And then Israel, I think, received about 14, maybe $15 billion so far. And the border was supposed to receive $20 billion, but didn't receive that much. And anything that does go towards the border in terms of money is not going towards walls, but more towards, you know, fentanyl detectors and more judges. And it's nonsense, really. But because Tucker brought all that up, Ben Shapiro went on this whole thing where he was just talking a whole bunch of mess about Tucker Carlson. So we're going to get into this a little more. But one thing that he said was that nobody is calling for war with Iran. And I think that is completely wrong. I mean, when October 7th happened, there were multiple people who were basically saying, let's go to war. Let's send money. Let's send soldiers. Let's send aid. Let's go to war. One of them was Lindsey Graham.
Segue into what Senator Graham has been saying recently, isn't it?
And people need to understand that this is a very real conversation. They want to go to war with Iran. A very sizable portion of the GOP, frankly, probably elements of the Biden administration as well, as best exemplified by Senator Lindsey Graham, who has been going on television in recent days, calling this, quote, a religious war, indicating that it's some sort of holy war, putting us, I guess, against the side of on the side of the Jews versus Islam, and then also calling directly for strikes on Iran. Let's take a listen.
I am tired of appeasing the Hamas, apologizing for them. They want to kill Israel, so does the Iran. The Ayatollah wants to destroy the Jewish state. They don't want to coexist with Israel. This is not a land problem, a boundary problem. It's a problem of you cannot live in my world. My God determines that you die. The Germans believed that the Jews were inferior people, and their goal and the final solution was to eradicate the Jewish people. Well, Iran and Hamas believes that the Jewish people should die as a result of religious teachings. We're in a religious war here.
We are in a religious war here. That is the most dangerous rhetoric. It harkens back to George W. Bush and the whole axis of evil.
So Lindsey Graham was not the only one calling for this type of thing. I mean, Nikki Haley, Lindsey Graham, it was very alarming how many mainstream outlets and politicians were just gung-ho on this whole war. And it was like, you know, push Ukraine aside. This has to happen right now. And Tucker and Candace kind of had this mindset of, what about what's going on in America? There's so much going on in America. And somehow that got conflated by Ben Shapiro as Tucker Carlson not caring about Jewish people. You know, I have a little bit here of Tucker Carlson actually commenting on Ben Shapiro. And then I'm going to end it off with the last thing that Matt Walsh said that I really think is him pretty much declaring he doesn't care if he gets fired from the Daily Wire. All right, let's get into it.
I've watched the entire kind of right-wing ecosystem get embroiled in fundamentally what is a third world conflict. Now, we can say support, not support, we can have criticisms, et cetera, of that. But what explains this literal allegiance to narrative on Ukraine, on Israel? Why is it that so many of these people don't seem to have the same level of care for actual American citizens?
I find it really distressing. And in both of those conflicts, I approached it with a clean conscience because I just don't have strong feelings one way or the other. And I'm not hostile. I've never hated Ukraine. I don't have any feelings about Ukraine. And Russia, same thing. I've never been to either place, and I'm not invested emotionally. So I could just look at it from an American perspective. In the case of Israel and the Arab world, I've spent a fair amount of time in both, and I like both. And I felt terrible for the people who were killed on October 7th. I still do. So I had no weird motive. I was just thinking about it from an American perspective. Is this good for us or is it not? And I was just amazed by the intolerance and the willingness to immediately go to invective and character assassination. And it's I said, first of all, if the people who live in Gaza who are being moved out are so evil and dangerous that they can't live in the region, why would you want them to move into my country?
And Tucker, by the way, then continued along these lines. He did an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. And he likened what just happened in Israel, the kidnapping of women and their rape, showing video of this happening, like as he's talking about this. He compared that to drug overdose deaths in the United States. Now, I believe we should fully care about the 100,000.
Very emotional, Ben Shapiro. Facts don't care about feelings until they hit your feelings. And that's how everybody really feels. You know, it was cool when Ben Shapiro first said that, but nobody can stick to that forever. I mean, let's be real. I mean, you know, people are people. You're going to get emotional, especially a Jewish guy over October 7th. You're going to get emotional. You know, you're going to throw that out the window. So it's no surprise, but, you know, it just doesn't read well on Ben Shapiro, in my opinion. But here's the last clip of what Matt Walsh had to say. And it's in, again, knowing how the Daily Wire felt about Candace Owens, getting rid of her because of what she was saying, and now to hear Matt Walsh say this, I don't know. Let's hear it.
It is not racist. Now, I realize this is the narrowest, most limited definition of these terms, and it's also the only coherent and clearly delineated definition. If you expand it beyond these boundaries, you will quickly find that now there are no real boundaries and anything can be included. So, what if somebody says something that is really clearly anti-Semitic? What if they stand up and they say, this would be the clearest version of all, I hate Jews? What if they said that? Well, there's no denying that such a statement is anti-Semitic. There's no denying that likely statements like that have been made on college campuses. Should there be an executive order or law prescribing punishments for such expressions? No, of course not. If a person hates Jews, they should be allowed to say so without any legal repercussions. If they hate black people, if they hate Asians, if they hate gay people, if they hate Christians, if they hate white people, if they hate me, if they hate you, if they hate anyone for any reason, they should be allowed to say it. And they are allowed to say it about some of those groups. They should be allowed to say it about any of them. Because you know what? People can feel how they feel, and they can say how they feel. And if free speech doesn't mean that at least, then it doesn't mean anything. So how should we respond to somebody who says such things? How should we answer a true expression of hate? Well, through speech. Fight speech with speech. Why is that such a difficult concept? On a college campus, we should be teaching students how to communicate their disagreement and disgust and revulsion through speech of their own. They shouldn't need a quote-unquote safe space to retreat to. They shouldn't need the governor to come save them. If they don't like something that somebody has said, they can say so and they can explain why. Now, that's not going to stop the other person from saying it, but that's the way it works in life, or how it should work. You don't get to control what other people think, and you don't get to control what other people say. Unless you're Greg Abbott, apparently, which is why he is today canceled. That'll do it for the show.
Man, I think Ben Shapiro would disagree with that. I mean, given the way that he's been for the past few months, I think he would really disagree with that. So, and even that last little statement of like, you don't get to control what people think, you don't get to control what people say. That's literally, looking from the outside, from the Candace Owens Daily Wire situation, that's exactly what they did. They couldn't control what she said. They couldn't control what she thought. You have to leave. And now Matt Walsh is saying the exact same thing. The thing that Candace exhibited through her work is now the thing that Matt Walsh is saying directly, that you cannot do that. And he's pointing it towards Governor Greg Abbott, but obviously he feels this way across the board, and he feels like there shouldn't be any hate speech laws, which I do agree with. I really do agree with. You know, a lot of people will try to throw things at me as a black person. You know, what if someone says this? What if someone says that? It's like, I don't know, man. When somebody says something about black fathers, I'm like, they're not talking about me. They're probably talking about my dad. My dad was a terrible black father. He was one of those guys. But they're not talking about me. I'm a present father. I'm a really present father. You know, people speak in Ebonics and, oh, why do they speak that way? I don't know. They're not talking about me. I talk whiter than most white people. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I know they're not talking about me. And if we actually have a discussion, I would rather say my piece, they say their piece, and we end it at that. I wouldn't call for somebody like, oh, I should just be able to call the police. You just said you hated black people. I'm calling the police on you and have you put in jail. No, I don't want that, because then one day I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something that makes somebody uncomfortable. You know, things like that are passing in the UK and in Canada, where you can say something and make someone feel uncomfortable. Hasn't quite passed in Canada yet. It's being brought up, but things like that exist in the UK. You can make a tweet that makes somebody feel uncomfortable. And I'm using that word for a reason, because I feel uncomfortable in this chair right now. You can make a tweet and make somebody feel uncomfortable, and they can call the police on you. The thing that I think Matt Walsh is really focused on is that it's a slippery slope once you start to make hate speech laws. Once you start focusing on one group and not others, and it's a very slippery slope of how deep it can go. And at the end of it all, even though it makes that one group, those people, feel more empowered or feel protected, all it's doing is slowly taking power away from the rest of us. Because when people can control what you say, they are indirectly controlling how you think. And I don't think that's something that should be able to happen to anybody. And like Matt Walsh said at the beginning of all this, there's already laws in place. But that is not the question of the video. Do you think Matt Walsh's timer has started ticking on the Daily Wire? I certainly do. I don't know if Ben Shapiro is going to take any shots at him, because it wasn't directed at him, or Matt Walsh was not directing this at the Jewish community. He was directing this at Governor Abbott, but his words still stand the same. Where Greg Abbott thinks there should be this double type of protection for Jewish people, Matt Walsh thinks there should not be. Is this the beginning of the end for Matt Walsh at the Daily Wire? Let me know in the comments section. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And other than that, I'm out.